Where are house prices headed? Where are interest rates headed? That's the question that I'm getting a lot as a real estate agent for nearly 20 years. And when I hear this question, I hear people asking, when is housing going to become more affordable? At the moment, only 15% of Californians can afford to purchase the median home price, which at the time we're filming this video here in Orange County, that's just over $1.2 million. And at the same time, California has nearly 70% of the highest price zip codes in the nation. So there's really nowhere to hide when it comes to buying a home in California. And because of all of that, there's this belief that something has to change. Just because of how crazy things have been over the last couple of years, we've seen home prices up nearly 30 to 40%, while at the same time, you've got nearly 92% of Americans sitting on interest rates below 6%, which is a full 1% lower than where we are today. So what I want to do is spend a little bit of time and talk about house prices, talk about mortgage rates, talk about the correlation between the two and what you're likely to see over the next 6 to 12 months to help you become a better buyer, seller, or investor in the Orange County housing market. But before we do that, I'd like to take a minute and ask a favor. If you find any value in my videos at all, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. And if you're someone that wants to stay updated on everything Orange County real estate related, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. At the time we're filming this video, the California Association of Realtors is expecting home prices to increase 6.2% in 2024. And I realize a lot of viewers are watching this going, Jeb, how can this continue to be the case? How can we get home prices continuing to go crazy even at a time when mortgage rates are sitting around 7%? Well, as I often say, it always comes back to supply and demand. When you have more people that want housing than you have the number of available houses on the market, that essentially puts the negotiation in the favor of the seller, makes it a seller's market. And in turn, because of that lack of inventory, you got buyers fighting over property when the right home presents itself. And that's exactly what took home prices up so much from the early part of the pandemic to what we're experiencing right now. And with that, I think it's important to note why we saw such a big boom in the number of people coming to the market. It wasn't investors seeking the market like a lot of headlines out there. In fact, it was a lot of first-time home buyers coming into the market. And the main reason for that is because millennials make up the largest cohort of buyers ever coming to the market. And guess what? They've been turning the prime buying age, which is 33 to 35 years old, over the last couple of years. So it's the right time in their life to become homeowners. And along with that time in their life, what we saw is mortgage rates come down to numbers we've never seen before, which helped improve affordability in a significant way. So what you had is you had all of the buyers that would have normally bought in 2020. And on top of that, as mortgage rates continued to trend lower, what you had was demand being pulled forward. So people that would have bought in maybe 2021 or even 2022 or perhaps 2023, they were pulled into those earlier years because housing affordability had improved so much with low mortgage rates. Now, I realized during that same period of time, we saw home prices continuing to increase month over month. Sometimes we would see 3 to 4% in a given month. But there's something that I always like to point out. Home buyers, they live in the payment, not the price of a property. They often don't remember what they paid for a home. In fact, they don't really remember what their interest rate is, but they can often tell you how much their mortgage payment is. And that's typically how a buyer decides how much home they're going to purchase. They don't say, hey, I'm going to go purchase $1 million home because they want to buy $1 million home. They look at the payment that's associated with that price and say, hey, I can afford that based off how much money I make. Therefore, it seems like $1 million is the right price point for me. So what happened during the pandemic is the people that were looking at $1 million, those home prices probably increased to 1.1, or in some cases even 1.2 million. But during that same period of time, we saw interest rates in the low 3s, high 2% for many home buyers out there, which means that new payment that's associated with that $1.2 million home, which is likely the same payment they would have had when they were originally looking to buy a home at $900,000 to $1 million. So ultimately what was happening was buyers were able to afford more home because affordability was impacted so much by mortgage rates. But here we are on the flip side of it, and people are going, something has to give. We either need to see a break in home prices or we need to see a break in mortgage rates. And with that, there's a lot of people that I talk to that are expecting a break in both. And that's really what I want to talk about here today. It's very, very unlikely that you see both home prices and mortgage rates go down at the same time. And the main reason for that is because even as we sit right now with mortgage rates at 7%, we have enough buyer demand out there at the moment to keep pace with the supply of inventory. In fact, there's probably more buyer demand than there is inventory, especially when you're talking about the median home price or below, which is the primary reason that we're still seeing open houses busy, we're still seeing multiple offer situations, and we're seeing homes selling above the asking price. So I would ask you as a viewer, if mortgage rates come lower and make housing more affordable based on the monthly payment, wouldn't that in turn create more buyer demand? In addition to creating more able buyers in the market, we often talk about the willing and the able. The willing are people that want to own a home, and that's pretty much everybody in America to some degree. But we're actually limited with the number of able buyers. How many of those willing are actually able to buy based off their income, based off debt to income ratios, based off where mortgage rates are, house prices, all of those things that we like to factor in. So as mortgage rates move lower, housing affordability improves, which means the number of able buyers increase, which in turn throws more buyers in the home buying pool and ultimately creates more competition. So let's talk about the flip side of that. How could we see home prices decrease? Well, we've actually seen home prices continue to increase even with mortgage rates sitting at 7-8%, which is the peak that we saw last year. And the primary reason for that is because we have more buyer demand than we have supply, as we've discussed. So I'm reaching out to you as a viewer, asking you, what would cause inventory to increase in a meaningful way? Because you need significantly more homes on the market than you have said buyers in order to cause sellers to reduce their prices in order to sell those homes. Because at the end of the day, you need more supply than you have demand in order to see home prices move lower. Now I'm going to guess what most people wrote in the description. They're guessing that a recession is going to happen. So let's take a minute here and talk about what happens if a recession actually happens. Well, typically during a recession, that means slower growth in the economy. That means businesses are slowing down, there's less money being made, and typically means that businesses are starting to lay off employees in order to generate more revenue. By getting rid of employees, they can in turn save some money and make more money on that side. But during that same period of time, while the economy is slowing, guess what the Federal Reserve is doing? The Federal Reserve is now trying to stimulate the economy. And guess how they do that? They do that by reducing the federal funds rate and allowing businesses to borrow money at cheaper rates, and in turn trying to stimulate the economy. So as they reduce the Fed funds rate, that in turn means mortgage rates are likely to go lower as well. And we already talked about what happens as mortgage rates move lower. But let's take a minute here and talk about the whole job layoff scenario, because there will be job layoffs. There will be people that need to sell their homes because they no longer have employment. But I often ask people when they say this, how many of those people getting laid off are just going to stay home, aren't going to try and go get another job? Well, there's definitely a small percentage of people that will do that. But my guess is anybody that gets laid off and isn't trying to find more work probably isn't a homeowner. They're not trying to save their situation. So on the flip side of that, if you're a homeowner and you get laid off, you're probably trying to go out and find another job. On top of that, a lot of households are dual income households, which means if one person gets laid off, there's still someone in the house able to make money until that other person finds a job. And because many of these homeowners were able to take advantage of super low rates, their mortgage payments have actually decreased over the last couple of years, putting more expendable cash in their pockets. But I realize that's not going to be everyone. There will be some people that need to sell their homes. So with that, I ask you to look at the dynamic of most sellers out there. There's more equity in the system than there's ever been, which means if a seller goes to sell their home, they're typically going to have enough equity in that property for it not to be a short sale and or a distressed situation, which in turn means they're going to be able to sell that home at market value. And because inventory is low and we still have buyer demand, now remember, if there's a recession, interest rates are going to move lower, which in turn is going to increase more buyer demand. So as a home that comes on the market, you're going to have competition looking to buy those homes, which ultimately means it's not a distressed situation. In order to see a meaningful move down in prices, you need to see forced sells. You need to see people that absolutely have to sell their home for one reason or another and are willing to cut their price in order to get that home liquidated. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't see a scenario happening anytime soon where that's actually going to be the case. In fact, I see home prices moving slightly up to sideways over the next couple of years. I do believe there's somewhat of a cap on appreciation because there's only so many able buyers out there in the market. There's just less people feel able to pull the trigger because of housing affordability. But during that same period of time, I do believe mortgage rates are going to move down. They're not going to move down tomorrow or maybe even next month, but you are going to continue to see the economy slow, which in turn is going to lead to lower mortgage rates and ultimately help with housing affordability. Lower mortgage rates will impact your bottom line more than house prices moving downward. And that's exactly what prospective home buyers are going to see once we start to see that break in rates. Now, I've been a real estate agent for nearly 20 years, and I can tell you every single year during that period of time, I've had home buyers telling me that housing is too expensive. How can anyone afford this? And during that 20-year period of time, housing has increased a couple of 100%. Now, this isn't a push to get you to go out there and buy a home, but it is a push to be realistic with what's happening out there in the market. Now, don't get caught up in thinking that something has to happen just because you can't qualify at the moment. Rather than focus on that, instead, you should focus on things that you can currently control, like getting pre-approved, working on your credit, saving for a down payment, budgeting so that when the right opportunity does present itself, you're in the best position possible to take advantage of it. Now, if you're located here in Orange County and you're looking to buy a home and you don't have a real estate agent, I would personally love the opportunity to guide you through that process. Now, if you're watching this and you're outside of Orange County, I have a team of real estate professionals that work exactly like I do. So if you're looking for someone to start that process, do me a favor and check the referral link below.